Welcome back to another video. This is Russell from Russell's Fishing Tech. Today we're going to talk, it's not your grandfather's steelhead fishing anymore. That's the topic. What do I mean by that? Things change on the Great Lakes. They continually change year after year after year, and things are definitely quite a bit different, now today in 2022 than they were in the early 90s when I started really fishing the lake and can remember a lot about it. So when I was a kid, first mating for Dumper Dan, and even before that, fishing with my dad for fun, we went, steelhead fishing or rainbow trout fishing quite often, but we did that primarily in the month of June. We did it up on the surface, top 20 foot of the water column, and we did it with a lot of orange spoons. Stuff like this orange knight right here would have been and will be a killer for, top 20 steelhead fishing. What has changed? Well, the way the lake is now, especially on the Wisconsin side, what we're seeing is that we're doing most of our king fishing in June and early July, and then we're doing our mixed bag fishing in mid-July through the rest of the year. So July and August, we do a lot of what I call mixed bag fishing, where that bag of fish, that cooler of fish, will be made up of a good chunk of steelhead, maybe a few lake trout, a couple of kings, and a couple of cohos or something on a really great day. The positive part about that is, I've said this for the last couple of years, I think the best overall fishing, numbers of bites, numbers of fish caught, things like that, has been in the month of August the last couple of years out of Sheboygan. We head out a couple miles, 4 or 5 miles, all the way out to 10 miles, and fish in that 150 to 400 foot range. But instead of fishing on the surface for these fish, because the water's warmer a little bit later in the year, we're fishing a little down further. 40 foot to about 100 foot down seems to be that key area. That's a pretty big section of water, 60 foot of water. So we're spreading that out and covering that with a bunch of different setups. We're using downrigger, a downrigger down deep or a couple of them. We're using, braided or wire dipsies with the Magnum diver size on them. And we're using a lot of boards, generally like 3 boards a side type of thing, with anything from a 10 color lead core, 200 copper, 250 copper, 300, 350, 400, all the way through the water column. And we're having a lot of success, like I said, the last couple of years on our charter boat, Fish Stick, and a lot of the charter boats here locally. August was some of the best fishing for overall numbers of fish and consistency of bite. So what has changed in the way we fish those fish? Well, we're fishing them down a little deeper. So what we're finding is we're not using as much standard spoons anymore. We're bumping our spoon size up to magnums. And when we do use some standards, maybe like this, orange stud UV, or this orange crush, a lot of this orange colors still, when we do use those standards, we're using those in our top rods. So our couple of top rods, maybe a 7 color, a 10 color, a 200 copper, we might use those standards. Or what I like to do a lot on charters especially is I'll run a deep rigger down 90 or 100, and then I might run a free slider with it. So that free slider will get you down about halfway or so. So that I'll put a standard spoon as my free slider and then a Magnum spoon as my lower bait. If you haven't seen my slider video, I got one of those on my YouTube page, so you can check that out, difference between a stacker and a slider. I like sliders, especially for that offshore fishing when the fish are really spread out in the water column. Now, as I said before, we might run some of them standard size spoons up high. After we get down a little deeper, I go to the Magnum spoons. And what I'm finding is we're still sticking to some of those orange colors. We might use orange crush again, orange stud, orange knight. Any of those orange colors will have their days even in the Magnums. But we also start to use a little bit more of what I call mixed species colors, something like a super frog, where you will absolutely catch steelhead on that, but you got a chance now at a king or a lake trout or something else. Mountain Dew stud is one of my favorites. It's a fantastic multi-species spoon. You'll catch rainbows, you'll catch lake trout, you'll catch kings, you'll catch cohos, catch browns, you'll catch every species that swims in Lake Michigan and Lake Ontario on that color spoon. You'll notice all those blanks that I held up are primarily gold blanks. I really, really like gold blanks for this type of fishing because I think steelhead really prefer them. The kings and lakers will hit them as well. PK Special is another one. Could use this in a standard size up real high or in a Magnum size down a little deeper. But what I've also noticed over that time period is that we've had a lot of our success on flashers and flies, which has been the real interesting part. And when we get them on the flashers and flies, they also seem to be bigger. So in June years ago, when we caught them on the surface, we caught a lot of 3 to 5 pound steelhead. And we still do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Those are great fish. They're fun fish to catch, great fish to eat. But what I notice is when we start to fish that 40 to 80 down, we generally run into a little bit bigger size class of fish. And when you fish them with flashers and flies, we generally catch a little bit bigger size fish. I would say more like that 5 to 10 pound class now on average. I've noticed some trends in the flashers and flies that I wanted to share with you. First, in the flies, I've mostly had success with shiny flies. So it's been stuff like Novocaine. Illumination UV is probably my favorite for this type of fishing. Vanilla Ice, which is a new one this year, has been good for me in testing in this type of fishing. Anything that's got the UV or the shiny mirage material in it that we make, you will do well on it. Now, I'm not saying you can't do well on some green flies and things like that. You absolutely can. But for me personally, I've noticed that anything shiny has been really good, and particularly in attracting the steelhead. Now, when it comes to flashers, we've figured out that it's very specific. It seems like they want either chrome and blue or chrome and yellow. And I'm going to show you some examples of some specific ones that have been dynamite for me for multiple years now, that I've done really, really well on out in that, 150 to 400 foot of water, 40 to 100 down. SGH is one of my favorite multi-species flashers. Just a great flasher overall. Of course, Megatron. Can't not have Megatron. It just works day in and day out all the time. Another one is PK Special, UV PK Special, I should say. UV PK Special is one that you're gonna want to probably have for that type of fishing. Chrome Blue Jeans, Blue Stud UV, Arctic Stud. Those are all really good blades for that 40 to 100 down range when talking steelhead in particular. We're targeting that mixed bag species, but we're primarily thinking steelhead are going to make up the bulk of our cooler. Now, I said chrome and yellow. Mentioned in if you follow my morning buzzes, my dad said his hottest flasher last year overall was Mountain Dew Stud. He nicknamed it Better Than Alex. Alex is his first mate. The reason that flasher is number one flasher is because it works all the time. I just said that about the Mountain Dew Stud spoon. This will catch you lake trout, catches early season kings, catches late season steelhead. Mountain Dew Stud is just a good mixed species. It might not be your hottest flasher every day, but you can pretty much put this flasher out early June and expect to run it all the way through August and have success on it on a pretty consistent basis. Yellow Jeans is another one. This one's had plenty of days where this was really, really good for me out in that deep water for steelhead in particular. Lake trout tend to like this one as well. And then one I wanted to mention that I think is a wild card. I tested it last year and it was really good, and I think it'll be good again this year and going forward for you guys, is the new DuraStud UV. It's got kind of an orangish, copperish, greenish, depending on the sun angle, look to it. And I think that orangish part really ends up being a pretty good color for steelhead in an offshore bite. So kind of rounding up today's video, we're talking not your dad's or not your grandpa's steelhead anymore. What we're referring to is, yes, we still do attack steelhead from time to time up in that top 20 foot of the water column, but the water has to be cold for that. And generally speaking, now the way the lake is, we're fishing kings when the water's cooler. We're fishing mixed bag when the water's warm. So we're dropping our gear in July and August down further. We're mixing our flashers and flies with some Magnum spoons and very little standard spoons. And we're using particular colors and setups to attack that bite in July and August out on the Wisconsin side of Lake Michigan in that 150 to 400 foot range. Good luck, good fishing, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you.